All right, Psalm 2, let's call this one, We Want Him to Be One Way When He's Really Another. In this chapter where the psalmist is going to talk about a simple question: why is it that the nations, rulers, peoples, etc. rage against the Lord and his anointed? In this chapter that is roughly going to break down in terms of three personalities or types of people. We've already mentioned the former, those who are raging against the Lord and his anointed. In the second portion, it's going to talk about the Lord's response to those who are raging against him and his anointed. And his response is simply, this is it. And even though we live in a democracy, in an era where we like to advocate for pushing democracy out to other parts of the world, God is basically saying in this story, you cannot vote his anointed out, understanding that his anointed is who we now know as the Christ, which introduces the third person or personality in this psalm, which might be described as the narrator, who is going to give us more detail on what God has said about his anointed. He is not simply his chosen, but he has God's endorsement. He says he is going to endorse him with the power to smash the nations with a rod of iron, meaning as much as they might have been ambitious to be able to rule one way, it is actually going to be another, reminding us once again that you can't vote out the Christ, which reminded me that many times in the church, we often fixate so much on the ways that people categorically reject either God or his anointed that we forget the ways that we can be tempted to do it as well, understanding that to the degree we fixate on pieces of the Christ or our favorite parts of his character at the expense of understanding who he is completely, we might actually be doing the same thing as people who reject him altogether outright. Sometimes we say it this way: if you wrote a book about your life, your own autobiography, and you had someone who read through it and selectively cut out individual stories or passages about your life and tried to redefine you according to those clippings, you might be offended at the way they respun who you really were. Likewise, to the degree we fixate on certain parts of Christ's character, we may find ourselves rejecting who he actually is. Reminding me of a story that Christ himself tells, one that I'm sure we've mentioned before, about 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish. The 5 wise virgins were those who were prepared to meet their groom as he was. The 5 foolish were those who were partially prepared but were not completely prepared for his arrival. And so Psalm 2 may be helping us understand the way in which those who have a healthy relationship with God's anointed are not preoccupied with trying to make him one way when he really is another. And like the 5 wise virgins, instead of wasting their time trying to make him something he's not, they are spending their time getting ready to see him as he actually